All right, let's get started here. So, this is the maiden voyage of Real Mortgage Talk. So, that's the name of this channel here on YouTube that we're going to be posting this. And I've got Dan Longman with NFM Lending with us today. So, Dan and I go back a long ways. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We've been business partners for how long? Do you know the math? I,
It's like 21 years, man.
21 years. Wow. Okay.
Mm.
I would have got that wrong. So that's good. 21 years. So we've both been in the mortgage industry for this long. We're now currently with NFM Lending. So along the way, we've learned a few things about real estate. We've learned a few things about mortgage, and we want to talk about topics here that we think are really relevant to people. And there's a lot going on right now. And I think the more that people kind of understand sort of the behind the curtains, right? Like kind of inside of our industry, I think it's going to help a lot of potential buyers, sellers out there when it comes to navigating this real estate market. Dan, let's talk with, or I'd say let's start with the first thing that comes to mind is, there's so much data out there. I know you like to look at data. I like to look at data. And I think we're making the mistake with a lot of the data we're looking out there on the market of saying, well, historically, if this data comes in, it means this. But right now, people don't feel like this market is a good market. Give me some reasons why you think buyers are feeling this way about the real estate market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, man, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
21
absolutely.
years, and we've never sat down in an interview. This is historic right here. So, um, anyway, no, excited to be here, and we'll definitely dive into it. So, yeah, as far as your question, as far as buyers, just maybe showing fear right now of buying in this market, like what is causing them to just be reserved and trying to take that leap. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we went through a long streak of very low inventory. And at that same time, we had rates rising rapidly. And now we're at a point where, rates have stayed at this pretty high level. And it really comes down to affordability for a lot of people. They are just looking at their budgets. I mean, going back to what you said about data, if you look now, a person's monthly payment when it comes to their household, when it comes to their mortgage payment is a lot higher than it's ever been. It's a larger percentage of their total liabilities right now. And that scares some people. That's, tough. So affordability right now, I would say, is kind of what's keeping people on the sidelines as far as jumping into this real estate market. And a lot of that affordability has to do with high prices and high rates right now.
Yeah. And, like I could sit down and I can show someone, look, appreciation is X percent, right? And let's just say right now, by the end of the year, we could be at maybe 4% appreciation, which is actually healthy appreciation for a market. That's like more normal than what we had over the previous few years where we were touching like 18%. So, like, you can definitely point to someone and say, if you buy a piece of real estate right now, there's a high probability this thing's going to appreciate, right? But what I've started to realize is that really only makes sense to someone that owns real estate. If you haven't bought a place, it's tough to like try and say, "Oh, okay, that's great." Like it really is. It's like it's hard for people to get past that and understand it. But yeah, I think that's a big barrier when you say, okay, if someone's going to get into real estate, they are going to get into appreciation. It's why a lot of times I tell people like, look, some of this is just going to come down to you just got to get in the game and you just got to
Yeah.
start somewhere. And I think a lot of people are afraid they're going to make a bad decision on when they get in the game, and that's holding them back as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, look, going back to the data, we've looked, if you go back the last 50, 60 years, I mean, there's only been 7 times that we've had a, kind of a decline in the market. And of course, the financial crisis was maybe 2 or 3 of those years. So that took up a majority of it. But real estate has always been a solid bet, right? It's been a long-term game. And I think, to your point, that's the problem. A lot of these people are so scared that they're going to get in and then there's going to be this immediate drop. But you really should get in kind of looking at real estate more of the long term gain. But, the other thing that no one ever talks about, it's always just, is it going to be a good investment, bad investment? What about when you're a first time home buyer, you're starting a family? I mean, buying a house, that there's a sense of pride in that. I I mean, that's where you
Yeah.
might have your kids. That's where you're going to grow up. You're going to make memories. And I think that's kind of gotten lost a little bit in all this. So, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I really think that, buying real estate is definitely a great investment. And we've talked about this. The 40X Club studies have shown people that own real estate have a net worth of 40 times greater than those that don't, that rent.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, why do we work so hard if it's not to go buy a house? Right. Like, I mean, I tell clients that a lot when we get to the point where the data is just stacking upon stacking upon stacking. And then it's like, stop for a second. Let's just remind ourselves, why are we doing this? Because we work our butts off and we want to provide something for ourselves or our families. Right. Like
Absolutely.
that's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's transition a little bit to a broader conversation of real estate and NAR's settlement and the legal aspect of what's been going on in the real estate industry. Everyone's speculating about what this is going to do. Give us a quick, dumbed down version of what took place and give me your best guess of what you think could happen here as we get into the summer and some of this starts to become more normalized in the industry and some changes are made.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Hot topic, right? I want to touch this one, but I'll dive in since you asked. Yeah. For those that don't know, I mean, there was a huge lawsuit against NAR, the National Association of Realtors, in the tune of 418 million. And basically, what came out of this lawsuit is it was a trial that started in Missouri, class action lawsuit. It was a group of sellers, and they just felt that the commission that they were paying was going to their listing agent, but they were sharing that with the buyer's agent and basically paying someone to negotiate against them, right? There was some other things, but let's just really simplify it for right now. So as a result of this lawsuit, there's going to be massive changes. NAR has, announced these changes. You can no longer put the commission in the MLS. The Department of Justice right now is looking into this further, and they might come out with their own ruling on this. So the bottom line is, come August 17th, which is the date that these changes are going to into effect, real estate is going to change, And I think if you ask people out there right now, you either have, you're in the camp of, oh my gosh, everything's changing. This is crazy. Real estate's never going to be the same. Or you have the people in the camp of business as usual, right? Nothing's going to change. And I kind of tend to go in the middle of this. I'm kind of in the middle. I mean, I think it's naive to say nothing's going to change, business as usual, but I also don't think the sky is falling. So for the full-time agents out there, the top producers, the people that really do this well day in, day out, not only are they going to be fine, I really believe, in my opinion, that they are going to rise. Like they're going to have more market share to go after. People are going to, jump ship. The part-timers that got into real estate just to make a quick buck, I think it's going to be too challenging for them. Maybe they don't know their true value, or their skill sets are not as great as the top producers. So I think they really have an opportunity. But I think any realtor in this market just has to adapt is what it comes to. I mean, look, for the last 100 years, NAR is the number one trade organization in the United States. And for the last 100 years, I mean, how you buy and sell a property in this country really hasn't changed much, right? With all the technology and home prices have gone up. I mean, it really hasn't changed. Every other industry it has. So it's almost like this was an inevitable, like this was eventually going to happen. I mean, look at our industry, Ken. I mean, we go back to the financial crisis, 2007, 2008, market crashed. We had massive regulation, right? I mean, the state of Florida went from 90,000 licensed loan originators down to 9,000 in 1 year. It was a massive.
I thought it was two. You and I thought we were the only ones left at one point.
I think my NMLS number was 0001. Yeah, it was just a massive exodus. But the people that stayed, my point is, people that stayed really thrived, right? Built our businesses, grew our businesses. And I think the realtors, it might not be as drastic as that, but I think they're going to have an opportunity, but you just got to be willing to adapt to the change. Just know there's now going to be maybe a couple different ways to buy and sell a property and different methods out there. So that would just be my advice. What I personally think that's going to happen is there's going to be some changes. It's probably not going to be as bad as everyone thinks, but you got to be willing to pivot and adapt to this new change.
Yeah, I've been telling a lot of realtors, listen, like we went through this, right? Like we went through this in 2008, and they totally changed the way our industry works. Like our
Yeah.
side of the industry. I mean, totally. They're not going to go through as much as we went through. And look, we were okay, but I think the only reason why we were okay is we were willing to change with the times and adjust how things were done. And I just remember at one point, just feeling, it was just another change that got brought down. And hey, now you have to do this different. And I remember just going one point of, okay, just tell me what it is. Now get out of the way and let me go back to doing business, right?
Yeah.
Like whatever it is, fine. But just, okay, that's what it is. Great. And just let me move on. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are going to do that. I think consumers, I think the impact to consumers is going to take a little time. I think there's going to be a little bit of a lag time before it truly impacts them. And it'll be interesting to see, but I don't think consumers need to be scared about these changes. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they need to be worried about it. I think this is going to just change real estate and how they're doing business. But consumers, I think, are going to be okay when all's said and done with this.
I agree. I agree.
Awesome. All right. Now we talked about the market. We talked about some changes coming. Let's kind of boil this down a little bit. Talk to me about from a buyer's perspective. So a buyer going to buy a property right now, say in the state of Florida, what's on the horizon here? What are some things that buyers can be excited about? What are some advantages they could take in this last half of the year?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, there's a lot of programs out there right now. And I know you said buyers, but I'm just going to touch on first time home buyers for right now because, the government has this, a kick right now to really help first time home buyers, right? It's a big incentive for them. So there's a lot of different programs out there that first time home buyers can take advantage of. And a big one here in the state of Florida is Hometown Heroes. I mean, it's coming
Awesome.
out for great
So
program,
good.
right? Yeah. It's in its pilot, it's still a pilot program, right? But it's in its third year. It's rolling out July 1st. They got approved for another $100 million. And this is open to first time home buyers and veterans. And veterans don't have to be a first time home buyer. So that's always a nice perk for our veterans. But it's a great program. I mean, the one thing about most down payment assistance programs, as we know, a lot of them have these income restrictions, right? Like you can't make a certain amount, 80% of AMI. And unfortunately, down here in like Florida, especially South Florida, most of our clients will exceed that income limit. So they can't take advantage of some of these programs.
Very
But
underutilized, right? So many of those programs
yes,
out there just are very underutilized, especially in our market.
yeah, absolutely. And even if you are under that, let's say you are one of the few people that were able to qualify, then you have the problem of can you even afford the house because of prices, right? You're like, okay,
Yeah.
I make under 65,000, but I can't even buy anything. So what I love about Hometown Heroes is that income threshold is so much higher. Like we can still assist people that are 80% or lower AMI, and those rates are slightly reduced. But for anybody else that's above that income threshold, they can still qualify for this program. And Broward County, Dade County, Tri County, we have the three highest income levels. Pretty well besides the Keys, Monroe County, we have three of the highest income limits in the state of Florida for this program, and it varies anywhere from about 158 up to 172 depending on what county you're in. I mean, and that's great. That can really help a lot of people. They can get into a decent size price home down here. So I'm super excited about that program. There's other advantages that we talked about. You can get up to 35,000 in down payment assistance money. It comes with a reduced interest rate on the first, and then the down payment assistant second is a 0% rate, and you're also exempt from some closing costs too. You don't pay doc stamps and intangible tax because it's a Florida program, so you're exempt from that. So a lot of great benefits from this program. I think we both agree. We've been through the gamut of different down payment assistance programs, and this one I tell people by far is the best one, especially for the state of Florida.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is I think there's a lot of buyers out there that want to be buying and they're looking for a reason. right? Like they're looking for something that will tell them. I equate it to a lot like going to the doctors, right? We all know we need to go for that checkup, but when do we normally go? When something's wrong, right? That's when we normally go. So
Yep.
unless you're getting pushed out of your lease or your lease is going up or, you know, you're adding another kid to the family and the walls are closing in on your current place, people are looking for a reason to get into the market when they know they should do it, right? Because they don't want to necessarily rent forever. And I think that program, Hometown Heroes, is that reason that people would want to jump in.
Yeah. Huge incentive, right? Definitely.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about sellers. Okay, so for people that are looking to go sell their property right now, um, I think there are some challenges sellers need to be aware of, right? And need to understand of what's the temperature of the buyers, what are buyers giving us feedback on as they're looking for properties. So what do you see are challenges that sellers have when it comes to listing their property right now?
Yeah. Well, listen, sellers need to understand that the market changes very quickly, and it's not the same market it was back in 2021 and 22, right? That was a huge seller's market. I mean, we saw craziness that we've never seen in this business with, waiving and buyers waiving everything, sellers, putting it on the market, getting 40 people at an open house and getting offers that were just insane. And, but they have to realize that it just as quickly as it went to that type of market, it has quickly kind of come out of that market as well. And it's not the same as it was. And what sellers really need to realize too is that, okay, we were at a very low inventory level, right? Record low inventory for a couple years here now, but it has slowly ticked up. And, even in the Tri-County area, we went from like under 3 months supply to now slightly over 4 months supply. So there's a little bit more inventory out there, right? Which is not in the seller's favor. But they also have to put themselves in a buyer's, perspective here. Like a buyer's dealing with high prices and extremely high interest rates. So if you're listing your property and first of all, it's a challenge for a buyer to be able to afford that and everything else. But
Right.
let's say your property is not in the greatest condition. You haven't touched the roof. You haven't done anything with the windows, doors, the floors, kitchen, bathroom. You can't expect a buyer to buy at the top of a market, pay high interest rates, and expect them to get in there and have to do some work to the property. So my advice to sellers is if you're going to go for that top dollar or what it's selling for, you better separate your house from the one down the street and the one across the
Right.
street. It better stick out a little bit. It better pop because buyers are just not going to do it. I mean, we've seen more cancellation of contracts during the inspection period than probably we've ever seen in the last 20 something years. And that has to do with just like we're talking about. The buyer's probably a little reluctant, and then they go and they do the inspection. They find all these things wrong with it and they end up
Yeah.
just walking. So, right. I
Because
mean,
if the
we see
buyer's
it.
at a lower price, lower interest rate, and there's some things not perfect at the house, okay, they can stomach that. They can invest some money into it. But if they're at a high interest rate, high price, and there's stuff wrong with it that they now have to put additional money into, that's where you start stacking up a lot of things against the buyer, right? And the buyer's
Yeah.
like, I'm tapping out, right? So, despite what people think, a lot of buyers, even though they like the HGTV shows and the home renovation shows and all that, most of them just want to be the turnkey, move into the property, right? Like
Yes.
they're not necessarily into it to be able to do all that work at the property. So that's a big thing. And I'm glad you touched on the inventory because this is interesting data that I don't think gets talked about enough. So we hear a lot about the inventory, and the realtors and the real estate industry does a great job of tracking all of this. And I think we passed 42 or almost 4,300 properties on the market right now in Broward County in the last week. Okay. But what doesn't get tracked on the real estate side, but we see, is that in the last week, we were down 16% in the month of May of applications for mortgages. Okay. And now that's a comparison of this same time last year. So, what does that tell you is happening? More properties are coming to market, which means as a seller, more competition's coming to the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your buyer pool is less than it was last year. So the demand is technically going down and the inventory is rising or the supply is rising. So you've got to understand this, right? You got to understand either timelines are going to be different on how quick you sell, or your approach to price has to be different. All those things that you brought up. I just think that that's the missing piece of kind of connecting the two industries, of just understanding, hey, it's not just that inventory is rising. Like, why is that rising, right? It's
Yeah.
also because we have less buyers coming to market right now. So,
And it's a great point, Ken, just to piggyback off that, like the applications down, right? That's usually a 45-day precursor to what's going to happen, right? So, yeah,
right.
I mean, it's like usually that application first. Most people, we get an application, they might not be buying for 30, 45, 60 days, right? So, if that's 16% lower than it was last year, yeah, what does that tell you? Kind of people that are looking to list here in the summer, you're going to have, it's a less of a pool of buyers, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, sellers definitely, it's a rapidly changing market. They need to understand that. They need to put themselves in a buyer's position. And yeah, they have to be flexible. You either got to make some upgrades to your property, offer the buyer something, whether it's, we say all the time, the seller credits, so the buyer can do a temporary rate buy down, a 2-1, a 3-2-1 buy down. That really goes a long way, and that'll, drive some interest to their property if they're willing and able to do that.
Yeah, buyers just want to win right now. They want to
Yeah.
win somewhere in the transaction, either negotiating
Yeah.
a price down, getting a seller credit, doing something with their interest rate that can help them. Like, they're just looking for a win somewhere across the board. So that's important.
Yes.
All right, we're about done here. So last question I want to ask you. You live in Weston. Weston's an awesome place. It's one of the best neighborhoods down here in this kind of western corridor, Broward County. So give me a place that you think might be under the radar, not enough people talk about, that you love giving your business to in Weston.
Ooh, wow. Okay, that's a good question. Well, I'll tell you what, man. I have been on a string of bad luck with flat tires. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the construction. I don't know if I harmed someone in some way and they're just throwing nails in front of my tires.
Karma,
But
right? Karma's catching up. That's what you're saying.
I guess so, man. But so there's a place, and I think they're a chain, but Discount Tires. They've been in Weston for about I think a little under 2 years. Guy Eric over there, man. This is just a first class type of operation. I mean, first of all, prices alone, right? I mean, I got a quote from my dealership. I got a quote from there. They were like half the price, but it's not just that, right? I mean, it's not. It's never just about the price. It was just such a great experience of going in there, quoting. Guy told me exactly how long it was going to take. You could get live updates, the app on your phone. It was telling me when my car was put on, the blocks in the bay, and when it was changed and when it was ready. So it was just great. And, also too, talk about transparency, like their screen, it faces you, the client. So you're looking at all the thing that, like the cost and the breakdown, the guys, I was like, man, that's just like complete transparency. So, and trust me, I've had to go there quite a bit, Ken, unfortunately lately. And I know how to
I
change a
love it
tire.
though. I love it. Like, I mean, but like you see that, and as someone that runs a business also, don't you just want to take ideas from me? You're like, oh wow, that's cool. We should implement that at our office, right? Like, I
Yeah.
love running into businesses like that just are screaming for attention for all the good reasons, right? Because it sounds like they take care of clients, they got a great system, great process, and on top of that, their prices are fair, right? And you
Yeah.
usually can't get all that in one. But that's awesome. So people got to check out Discount Tires in Weston. So
Discount Tire, baby. There you go.
awesome. All right, Dan, time to go. Thanks for doing this.
Anytime, man. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Take care.